These Ipswich Town players are defying the odds. Welcome back to TWTV for another video verdict, where you join us by the banks of the Thames behind Craven Cottage to look back at another town game, where we're hopefully going to give you some immediate, independent and compelling views of an Ipswich match. And we've just witnessed Fulham 2, Ipswich Town 2 in a pretty exciting game, and I'm joined by the man behind the most popular site on the web about Ipswich, Phil Ham, and TWTD staff writer Kallum Brisset. Welcome guys. Let's get straight into it, Kallum. Give us an overview of the game and key moments, please.
I think the immediate reaction is probably quite disappointing, just with the way that kind of having led twice and then conceding quite late on in stoppage time. But I think over time we'll probably look back on this as probably quite a good point away at, like you say, an informed Fulham side. And it was kind of the tale of three penalties, wasn't it? All three of the four goals coming from the spot. The one that wasn't was the opener, Sammy Schmodic's in the first half, which I think you have to say was coming against the run of play. I think Fulham looked the better side. They were controlled in possession, had not many clear-cut chances. I think Jimenez had one that was saved by Christian Walton, but they had all of the kind of the territory and the brief chances that there were. And then with our first shot of the game, we score. Comes from Ben Johnson, attacks a cross from Brody, I think it was. It comes off the bar, and Sammy Schmodic has another stab at it, and it ends up squirming in under one of the centre halves. And we managed to get it through to half-time, which I thought was first job completed. And then in the second half it all kind of went off with the penalties. They get a penalty which was given by VAR. I'm not entirely sure how Darren Bond, the referee, didn't give it the first time, from Sam Morsey. It looked stonewall watching it live. Was eventually given. Jimenez scores it, and then within, I think it was 21 seconds after the restart, we get a penalty ourselves. Liam Delap wins it. Liam Delap scores it. Consecutive penalties for him, or penalties in consecutive games. He's on to 8 for the season now, and Fulham were then kind of pushing for an equaliser without any huge clear-cut opportunities. Then Jack Clark hits the post, and within 30 seconds down the other end, it's another penalty. It's another penalty that is a penalty. Leif Davis brings, I can't remember who it was down, but Leif Davis brings whoever it was down. It was Jimenez, and it was Raul Jimenez who then scored. And we have to settle for a point. And in the end, we could have ended up losing it. They really did put the pressure on in the last few minutes of stoppage time, but we kind of, in the end, came away with a point when, at times in stoppage time, it looked like we might not have got anything.
Yeah. So much incident in the game. The shortest gaps between two penalties in Premier history.
It was.
And also, as you said, probably the key moment of the game was the fact that Jack Clark, he basically hit the post. It looked like it was going to go in, and really we'd have secured 3-1 at that point, and then they go the other end and get the penalty. So, Phil, over to you. You've written up your match report. Just build on some of the things Kallum's taken us through there about the game.
Yeah, I thought at half-time it was more of the same, as it were, from the Chelsea game and the Arsenal game to some degree. Got the goal, we defended well, as Kallum said. There was really one real chance that Fulham had, which was the header, but apparently that was offside anyway, so that wouldn't have counted. Penalties, I think that's the kind of key thing from a Town perspective, that they're both quite poor ones to concede. Sam Morsey, I'm not sure quite what he was doing, whether he was sort of found himself chasing back and Harry Wilson got under his feet, sort of thing, and he was trying to get, or he was just trying to foul him outside the area to stop the.
He was
the
going
move,
away. The attacker was going away from the danger area. Wasn't it? It was disappointing.
I think possibly the referee might have seen. I think Wilson made an awful lot of not a lot of contact. Which might have been what the referee was kind of thinking. Well, he's just thrown himself to the ground. But yeah, once you saw it again, there's obvious contact, and it was not going to get, and it was going to get overturned. Leif Davis won. I think tiredness really. I think we reached that stage of the game on a very heavy pitch because it poured with rain all game, and yeah, he just unfortunately just sort of stuck a leg out and. Over Jimenez went, so it's very difficult to argue against that one. Delap's penalty, I think he was clearly fouled. Whether he would have gone to ground is another matter, but I think it was a foul.
Yeah. It was probably the softest of the penalty shouts, wasn't it?
Possibly, I think so. But I think Kieran McKenna said in his press conference he thought all three were penalties.
Yeah.
I think he's probably right. Disappointing. Again, we come out sort of disappointed, and I think one of the things is a bit of a sort of theme really, that games where we've gone into injury time ahead or level and have conceded a goal, and so you would hope we won't rue that come the end of the season, but results like this might be ones that we look back on once it's all over. But at the end of the day, we kind of look at the game, the beginning of the match. I think we'd all been happy with the draw at Fulham.
Absolutely. So close to the 3 points, but again, as you said, at the start of the game, we'd have definitely taken a point. Kallum, could you take us through the team selection, and then as a group, we'll talk about what the performers were and man of the match, if that's okay?
Yeah, so 2 changes it was. One was Ben Johnson coming in for Wes Burns on the right, and then the other one was Amari Hutchinson, who was missing with injury. Sammy Schmodix came in, he obviously got the goal, stuck with the same kind of system, the back 3/5, which, as I say, Johnson came in on into right wing back and spoke about that after the game. He said it's a system that he not only thinks suits his game well, but he thinks it suits the personnel that we've got here. And I kind of agree with that. Obviously, we've got another centre half coming into the building in Ben Godfrey that was announced
it's now confirmed
this evening. So it's clearly a stacked area of the pitch, and I think it's a system that we showed today that with that system we can score goals. You know, there was talk about whether, particularly in the Arsenal game, whether we had all the kind of defensive solidity, but with nothing going forward. I think that was just the calibre of the opposition, to be honest. We showed we can score goals in that system today, and against Chelsea, although maybe looked a bit more of a 4 against Chelsea, but you know, the base structure with those 3 centre halves I think has been working well in recent weeks, and I'd be hugely surprised if we went away from that.
Let's talk about the performance. I thought Ben Johnson was really good today. For me, best performance in a town shirt. For
Ben Johnson at Spurs, he was good. But he'll be up there. He had a good game. Obviously Anthony Robinson on that side for Fulham is probably their danger man, and he did a reasonable job of nullifying him. But yeah, there were some good performers in there. I thought the back 3, as I mentioned, I thought all 3 centre halves were good in this game. Like I say, didn't concede again from open play. It was two penalties. And there was a little bit going forward.
I think the centre 3 defenders were excellent today. They were winning so much in the air. Really heartening display from them. I was worried when Mamari dropped out because he gives us so much up top, but I thought Schmodic did well. He covered a lot of ground. Phil, over to you. Who stood out for you, and who would be your man of the match?
Delap did well again. I think his hold-up play was obviously, I think better today, perhaps in some stages of the game than it has been. He gave their centre halves quite a lot of I think it was sort of almost inevitable that they were going to foul him in a very dangerous area at some point, and ended up being a penalty. Broadhead, I thought, actually, in the absence of Amari, provided that sort of running out and breaking, which I think the first goal came from initially, and it was his cross, of course. So I think he did very well, and is doing no harm for his cause to be in the side more regularly. But again, generally a sort of solid defensive performance. I think we are looking like now a side that plays on the counter attack, whereas perhaps most of the time under Kieran McKenna we've been a side that's had most of the possession. Although actually, you think back to the beginning of the Championship season last year, it wasn't quite the case of that. But anyway, I think we are kind of developing into a team in the Premier League that is that's defending in depth and solidly, and then catching teams on the break. And you look at the last 3 matches, it's gone very well, really.
Yeah, I mean the solidity now is it's looking good, isn't it? We look at different team. I mean, you know, Fulham are a good side going forward, but they just couldn't break us down. The central 3 that we talked about were really robust. I think that was positive. Apologies for all the noise. We're catching the emptying of the Riverside stand, and we're right by the Thames as well, so a bit of wind as well. But we'll carry on. I thought Broadhead was excellent as well. I think if you remember the half volley shot he had, which was superbly saved,
well saved.
Real highlight. But what a lovely little play from him. He was getting fouled a lot actually, and I think it was unfair. The perpetrator of that didn't get a yellow card.
Well, I think it was a deliberate thing, wasn't it? We started about 15 minutes in. We started to make 1 or 2 sort of forays into their half, breaks into their half, usually with Broadhead, as you say.
Yeah.
But as soon as he did that, he was fouled every time, and I think the referee probably should have started showing a yellow card fairly early on. And I can't remember many of their players getting booked at all actually today. But yes, he's done very well since he's come into the side. Really,
he really has. You know, we've talked about it before. I thought he was maybe going to be a bit lightweight, but you know, he did well. He did well at going up top today. Okay. So how did the away end come across in the press box? We're going to have a section later with Adam where we'll talk about the atmosphere and the ground, which is quite an interesting ground, because it really felt good in there today. And
it was pretty noisy. I kind of noticed at various times in the game, and I didn't think the Fulham support got particularly behind their side at any
I think
stage,
the
really
quietest home fans we've had all season. They had these ridiculously small flags. Did you see that? Brentford Brentford had their moments, but
I'll give Fulham 1-0 on their West London
in that derby in that sense.
I think the only time they made noise was when they were appealing for penalties, and maybe at the end when they kind of scented a third goal in the final minutes. But and again, one of the things that I think once they'd scored their second goal, our weakness from the bench was again. You saw us. It was going to be a case of hanging on because you didn't really see enough on the bench.
I like what Taylor was doing on the pressing, and I thought Burns did okay as well. But I think for me, Ali, there's just not enough there, and I'm sure that's where we'll look to change in the January window.
And Jack Clark, you have to say how unlucky he was with his shot because
what a boost for him that would have been.
I know.
And what a great moment it would have been in the away end, which was able to bounce because it feels like it's almost a wooden stand in there, so we were bouncing along. Okay, let's close out with looking around the Survival League. We've just actually been in the new Riverside stand watching Man U Liverpool, Liverpool Man U, which was actually 2-2 when we last were watching it. But let's look around. So Villa did us a favour by beating Leicester 2-0, which is helpful. What happened in the Bournemouth-Everton game? It was 1-0, wasn't it, to Bournemouth, which was good. And unfortunately, Brozier was taken off for them, maybe fortunate for us. So we maybe dodged a bullet there in terms of taking him on board as a striker. Palace 1-1 with Chelsea. Which is not ideal, but still it's not getting a win for them. And Saints lost heavily against Brentford, 5-0, which was they are looking very, very weak at the back, and that's it. So we look ahead also to Monday night when Wolves play Forest, and we're hoping the Tricky Trees can do us a favour there, and they'll be without Cunha in that game. But that's it for this week. Sorry about some of the background noise. We're having a break next weekend for the FA Cup Bristol Rovers tie, but we'll be back for the Brighton home game. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please like and subscribe. Hello and welcome back to Craven Cottage for our second segment of a video verdict, and I'm joined by Russell Claydon from Suffolk News to look at some an overview of the game, but also start to look ahead to the transfer window as well. Russell, welcome to the team.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. We've obviously had a view of the game from the guys earlier. What was your take? What do you think of the game? What's your overview, please?
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting next to a guy who was asking us, as the game started, if we'd be happy with a point. And me and Kallum just looked around straight away and went, yeah, of course we could. And I joked that Mick McCarthy wouldn't have even got on the bus. It was one of them, wasn't it, that if we came away from a point here, you'd think that's a good result.
It's funny how we're sort of leaving the game almost slightly disappointed because we hit the post from the Jack Clark thing. We're sort of thinking, but actually to get a point away in Fulham, who are in such form, they're in that top group now that's building
Fulham,
up.
I've been writing, since the end of the game now, and we've got to remember that the results they've got against the big sides, I think they were the only side going into this to have got a result against all of the current top 5, which is phenomenal.
That's really interesting, and also to have got 3 against Chelsea and a point here. We never saw 4 points coming from those 2 games. So let's take a step back. We've been doing video verdicts for quite a few games already, but let's talk about the season so far. We've just passed the halfway stage. You've obviously been following Ipswich very closely and reporting on them. What's your take of the season so far? What's your summary of where Ipswich are and how we've got on?
Yeah, well, the fear was, and I've been saying it to people, have we, we've come up too quickly really, because, back-to-back promotions, we're ahead of where we should be. It's a season too early really, and the fear is that we could have been Southampton at this stage with 6 League One promotion winners in the side, having not kind of brought the squad up to the Premier League quality, but we're not. Look where we are, we're right where we want to be, right on the cusp of being able to get ourselves out of that relegation zone, and it doesn't matter really if we don't do it until the final game of the season. That's just where we need to be at the end. You just need the points, don't you? And you need to be in touch and distance. That's my point. And we very much are.
And I think that's what we are. Think about where we are. We're only by goal difference, not in the bottom 3. As you said, we've got to stay in touching distance. I think picking up on one of your points, I think I've talked about it with the guys often on the show, is you've realised the gap. Every these teams around us, like Fulham today, every player's 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, and to still be competing in touch before the January window is a fantastic achievement, I think. Well, let's move on to that. Let's talk about the January transfer window. Obviously, there's been the announcement today of Ben Godfrey confirmed, which I think, as Phil mentioned earlier on the thing, there's a lot of competition now on that side, which is good. So O'Shea acts for that kind of axle role. That's a positive. I think the kind of consensus on the TWTD forum is kind of centre forward, right wing attacker, right back as our priorities. Do you see that as well?
Definitely, yeah, most definitely. Starting with the striker, that's the big one, isn't it? We love Ali Al-Hamadi, and he was bought as maybe a project player when we were thought that we were going to have another season in the Championship and he could develop with us. Suddenly he's thrown in the Premier League, having to come on and compete at such a level that he couldn't have imagined a couple of years ago. And he's doing a job for us, but Delap needs some more help. He needs someone with a bit more experience of the level to be coming in and out with him and helping him through these games. So that's the big one for me. Get that one sorted. That's the one that's going to take the longest amount of time, clearly, isn't it?
It's a good point. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We've got to have some more power in the strikers. I think, in a way, Broadhead's emergence has maybe reduced a bit of the need for that attacking midfielder role. I really like your point about Ali as a project probably for the Championship. It is a big ask for him to kind of make this big step up, and it'll be good to get him out on a loan. So Philogene is being talked about. That would be a good one, I think. That would really provide some competition both across with Omari and do you know much about him? Any thoughts on that? Is that a good move for us?
Seen him a couple of times, and he always looked really lively and a bit like that kind of impact player that Jack Clark can be. He's got magic in his boots, and a similar player to Omari really, and just adds to that quality that we'd have if we could get another player like him in. Players come in and out of form, and the more players you have of that ilk, the more options you have to have an informed player of that ability, and there's no doubt that he's got a lot of potential. I think it's one of if we can.
One of the guys mentioned in the earlier segment, just having a little bit more off the bench in that space. So if you could have a Philogene, a Broadhead, and an Amari all vying with a Smodic as well, I think that would make us a different proposition.
A lot of games in the Premier League seem to be won from the bench, don't they? And the players that you can bring on, and sometimes you're looking at our bench and you're thinking we haven't got enough.
And it's such a McKenna strategy, isn't it? Okay, so to close out, how are you feeling about our survival prospects? I mean, we've now got we've got some wins on the board. The draws have notched up today. We're still in touching distance, as you mentioned earlier. Do you think we've got enough?
It's all really positive. I mean, like I said earlier, we're exactly where we need to be, and we're growing into this season. There's no doubt about that. We're learning as we go along. We're set to strengthen the squad in January, which arguably has already happened since the full-time whistle went, now that we know that Ben Godfrey's with us, and he's got more than 100 Premier League starts, I think, under his belt. So he's going to really help boost that defensive options. yeah, I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, I think the Chelsea result and today's results have all given us a lot more confidence. And I think you're right about Ben Godfrey having that Premier League experience. I thought Johnson showed some Premier League experience today, which really stood out.
If we could play in the pink kit all the time,
I know.
It'd be great.
Let's play it at home. It's the future.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks again for tuning into TWTV. We've got a final section with Adam looking at the ground and the atmosphere and some of the stats from the game. But thanks so much for watching, and please like and subscribe. Welcome back to TWTV for our final segment, coming from the banks of the Thames outside Craven Cottage, and I'm joined by Adam, a keen blogger on TWTD and someone who's very interested in the stats of a game. Welcome on board.
Thank you. Nice to be back. The last couple of times I've been on, we've conceded 4 goals both times, so it's nice not to have to talk about a defeat.
Well, we've got a kind of better result today, actually.
Yeah.
Well, let's start off with that, actually. I'd certainly taken a draw before the game. What was your overview of the game?
Yeah, it was another defensive performance off the back of Arsenal and Chelsea. We set up to soak up possession really and try and hit on the counter. I think we were effective at that. We limited Fulham to just attacking down the wings, and then dealt with all of the aerial balls into our box very well. And then it very much turned out into a game of penalties in the end.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you that the way we were dealing with the crossing and our defence in the air was superb today, wasn't it? And I think a moment that we've talked about earlier with the other guys is that moment where Jack Clark broke through, hit the post, the away end was just the moment we thought we were going to take it, and then they went the other way. And I think Davis had a really good game, and it's a shame that he kind of got, I guess, fooled a little bit into giving that penalty away.
Yeah, it was a good jink from Jimenez, who played a lot better since Muniz came on to support him as well. He ended up more on the right hand side, and yeah, it was just a fast break from them, which they were looking for at that point. We almost, you could say, we didn't manage the game very well. We had too many people up and no one was covering that left hand side, which led to Davis having to run back and try and stop that attack. But
overall, a good result, really, against a team that was unbeaten for 7 games, I think.
Yep.
With some strong players and a very a quick team. But I think overall it was a great performance and it's a great result.
Definitely, they'll be pushing for Europe this year. They'll be in that pack with Brighton and Bournemouth and the ones just outside the top 4.
Yeah, those teams that we kind of aspire to be in their position. Well, in this section, we're going to really talk about the ground and atmosphere, and then get into some specific stats about the game and also some stats about the season. So let's start off by talking about the ground. We are behind or next to the very swanky Riverside stand, which actually I think apparently has pools planned to go on the roofs. It's quite something. It's like being outside a sort of 5-star hotel, isn't it?
It is a little bit down this side, and then you've got the cottage the other side as well. But it's a really nice stadium. Yeah,
an interesting juxtaposition, isn't it? You've got this modern stand, and in front of us is the Thames and the Thames walkway, and then directly opposite is the Archibald Leach, one of his famous stands, one of the few remaining alongside Goodison Park and I think Barnsley as well. What do you make of the ground?
It's probably my favourite ground that I've been to, I think, because it's those kind of old style grounds, but they've, like you say, they've added all of the hospitality areas, so it's got a good balance between keeping the history and also not feeling like a rundown bit of a dump, which some places went to last year. Leeds felt a bit like that at times.
Absolutely, and what a location to be right on the Thames, next to a park. It's really something, and falling into a Christmas tree here. We're still celebrating Christmas at this point. Let's talk about the atmosphere, Adam. I thought the away end was excellent today.
It was really good, and I think the acoustics were really good because it was quite narrow. It was narrow and deep, and we were definitely up for it. Didn't really stop singing the whole time.
Yeah,
the linesman got a bit of grief here and there.
There was a hilarious thing going on with the linesman where when he gave us something in our favour, he was loved, and then he was getting some quite nasty abuse every time he gave us things the other way.
Yeah.
But certainly the home fans, that's possibly the quietest we've heard, and the stand, even the Riverside, had quite a few spaces. They're obviously not selling it out either,
which is surprising given how high they are up the table and how they're pushing for European football and
what entertaining football they're playing as well, basically.
I think so.
So let's get into some of the stats from today. So they had significantly higher possession than us, didn't they? I think it was about
73% to our 27.
And it didn't feel, one of those games where it didn't feel like that. I felt like because we were getting upfield enough that you felt like we were in the game.
Yeah, I think they had the possession, but we again dropped back into a low block, soaked it up well, limited them to the wings, and then were effective on the counter. And in the end, we generated more expected goals than them and created the better chances, I'd say.
Well, absolutely, because we had penalties, and then obviously we hit the post through Jack Clark, which obviously it counts as off target, I believe. Do you know what the on target and off target stats were today for the game?
I think we had one on target, and they had just the two.
Right. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Before the game, when you were doing you do a blog before the match to kind of look at Fulham and look at how we may set up. What was a stat that maybe stood out for you before the game, and how did that play out in the game, Adam?
Yeah, I think the main talking point was whether both sides would stick with the back five, and then as part of that, the left backs were kind of the highlights, and neither of them had that good a game. So Anthony Robinson has the most assists for a defender in the league. He's not added to that. Leif Davis has the most key passes, I think the second in all of Europe at the moment for key passes as a defender. And he made a couple, I think he ended up with two in the end. But neither could get their assists up at all, and Leif unfortunately conceded the last penalty.
I think overall, I actually thought he had quite a strong game. Superb cross in the first half, if you remember, which I think if someone had got on the end on, would have got a goal from that. But he just got suckered in a little bit, didn't he? And that ended at 2-2. Let's then move on to looking at sort of stats over the season. Looking at Ipswich itself and some of our relegation rivals. What are the stats as we're at the halfway point of the season now, aren't we? What stats have stood out for you?
So, attacking wise, we're not shooting that much. I think that was evident in the Arsenal game. We've got the second lowest shots on target. I think since Broadhead has been in the team, we've created a bit more and been at least getting shots away.
And what a superb shot he had. That half volley that was superbly saved was one of the highlights of the game, I think, today.
Yeah. Everton are the only team that have less than us, understandably, under Sean Dyche. But at least we're kind of equal with our expected goals, whereas Everton are underperforming by about 4. The other way, Wolves have scored a bunch but are really leaky at the back, but they're currently overperforming their expected goals by about 11, I think, or just over 11. So we could potentially see a drop-off from them in terms of scoring anyway in the future, hopefully. They look like they might get dragged back down into it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Cunha is going to sign a contract, but we shall see where we go from there. Any other things in terms of further stats around Ipswich this season?
Individual errors is probably one that's quite relevant today as well, with 2 penalties given away. Our 21 puts us third in the league for that. I think Southampton are way out ahead with 30.
I can believe that.
And that was before last night where they conceded 5 and a bunch of them were ours as well. So they're probably on 33, 34 now. And clean sheets, I guess, is the other one. I thought we've been more solid since Walton's been in, but still just the 2 clean sheets so far.
And those errors individual errors is a problem. I think we won't survive until we seem to be improving the errors. I think recently, but they were really prevalent earlier in the season.
Particularly penalties. I think I'm not sure what the exact stats are, but with 2 today, we're probably up to 5 or 6 penalties conceded now.
Okay, well let's end that segment here. Thanks for coming on, Adam.
No problem
Really
at all.
Interesting insights to the game today, and then looking at the wider stats. Thanks so much for tuning in to TWTV again. Won't be around for the Bristol Rovers game, but we'll be back for another video verdict following our next home game against Brighton. Thanks so much for watching, and please like and subscribe.